In Israel, an armed attack in a music festival kills hundreds of revelers.
Authorities recovered at least 260 bodies from the site. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Yalago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. PCG confirms crude oil tanker Pacific Anna has arrived in Singapore. Philippines and Australia set for a trade and security meeting tomorrow. Israel declares a state of war against Palestine's Hamas and Hezbollah. The United States urges UNSC members to condemn Hamas but fails to issue a shared statement. And thousands die after an unprecedented earthquake hit western Afghanistan. A big-time rollback on fuel prices is set to take effect tomorrow. According to oil firms' advisories, motorists will have to pay 3 pesos and 5 centavos less per liter of gasoline and 3 pesos per liter less for kerosene. Diesel per liter, on the other hand, will go down by 2 pesos and 45 centavos. The adjustments will take effect at 6 in the morning.
Economists are expressing pessimism regarding the Philippine inflation rate's return to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP target of 2 to 4% for this year after the rate surged to 6.1% in September. According to China Bank's economist, inflation is likely to average 6% or even higher this year, even under an optimistic scenario where global oil prices decrease and rice prices reverse. BPI's economist adds that the BSP may consider raising interest rates in November if the inflation rate remains above the 4% target. The spike in September's inflation rate was primarily attributed to higher food inflation, specifically from rice inflation. Pantheon Macroeconomics is also revising its inflation forecast for 2023 to 6%, up from the previous estimate of 5.6%.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has issued a directive to the Department of Agriculture to utilize excess collections from the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, or RCEF, to support rice farmers. The 10 billion pesos allocated for the RCEF is sourced from revenues generated through rice tariffs. This funding is designated to finance programs and projects aimed at enhancing the competitiveness and productivity of rice farmers. President Marcos emphasizes that the surplus revenue from rice tariffs will also be used to provide farmers with essential equipment, tractors, dryers, and other necessary resources.
The National Irrigation Administration, or NIA, has identified about 257,000 hectares of agricultural lands at high risk of adverse impacts from the upcoming El Niño phenomenon. Central Luzon tops the list as the most vulnerable region with 85,000 hectares of land at risk, followed by 27,000 hectares in Soxargen, 24,000 hectares in the Ilocos region, and 17,000 hectares in Mimaropa, among others. Farmers in these areas have been advised to consider planting high-value crops to help mitigate the effects of the looming El Niño. The NIA is also actively developing and implementing solar-powered irrigation projects across the country. They have proposed an additional 30 billion pesos for these projects, which will cover 791 sites, benefiting nearly 40,000 hectares nationwide.
The Department of Budget and Management has greenlighted the release of 1 billion pesos worth of compensation to victims of the 2017 Marawi Siege. Vin Pasco for the details.
Budget Chief Amena Pangandaman has announced the issuance of a Special Allotment Release Order, or SARO, to compensate the 2017 Marawi Siege victims. This is a 1 billion peso allocation sourced from the National Risk Reduction and Management Fund as outlined in the 2023 national budget. According to the Marawi Compensation Board, or MCB, a total of 362 victims had been identified to receive financial remuneration. Under Special Provision Number 3 of the Fiscal Year 2023 General Appropriations Act, there are 3 key groups who are eligible to receive the compensation. They are property owners located in Marawi's affected areas that suffered damage and destruction during the siege, private properties that were demolished as part of Marawi Recovery, Rehabilitation, and Reconstruction Program, and legal heirs of individuals who have passed away or are legally presumed dead as decided by the guidelines formed by the MCB. Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Philippine Coast Guard, or PCG, has confirmed that the crude oil tanker that rammed a Filipino fishing boat in Pangasinan is now in Singapore. PCG spokesperson Rear Admiral Armand Balilo added that the Port State Controller PSC in Singapore would give way to the maritime officials in Marshall Islands. This is to conduct an investigation after it allegedly caused the deaths of 3 Filipino fishermen. Meanwhile, Balilo said that PSC of Singapore received details that Marshall Islands is holding an investigation of the maritime incident. He added that PCG is hoping that the Marshall Islands will be able to share the outcome of their probe.
A migration expert has highlighted a growing trend among Filipinos in Europe, where an increasing number are choosing Spain as their preferred work destination. Recent data reveals a significant surge in the Filipino workforce in the country, exceeding 100,000 individuals, although a majority of them remain undocumented. This rise is attributed to thousands relocating over the last decade, seeking employment opportunities, moderate weather, and liberal working conditions. The Department of Migrant Workers affirms its dedication to supporting the community regardless of migration status.
The Philippines and Australia are ready for a trade and security meeting tomorrow. Foreign Affairs Chief Enrique Manalo and Trade Secretary Alfredo Pascual are flying to Adelaide to preside over the 6th Philippines-Australia Ministerial Meeting, or PAMM. This is to build strategic partnership between Manila and Canberra even further. The Department of Foreign Affairs said that the 2 cabinet officials were invited by Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong and Trade and Tourism Chief Don Farrell. The agency added that the 6th reiteration of the PAMM shows a crucial opportunity to chart the course of the inaugural established strategic partnership between the Philippines and Australia.
The Philippines has officially condemned the escalating conflict in Israel, strongly criticizing the surprise attacks carried out by the Hamas group against Israelis on Saturday. The Marcos administration acknowledges the right of states to self-defense in the face of external aggression, as recognized in the United Nations Charter. This is in line with the request of Israeli ambassador to the Philippines, Ilan Flos, who sought expressions of support for Israel's right to defend itself. Flos also promised to continue protecting Filipinos currently in Israel. 2 Filipinos have sustained injuries, and 5 more are reportedly unaccounted for amidst the current situation. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has already directed the government to closely coordinate with the embassy and the migrant workers' office in Tel Aviv to ensure the safety of overseas workers and tourists currently in Israel. Meanwhile, the Department of Foreign Affairs said 25 Filipinos in Gaza have now requested assistance in returning to the Philippines.
Coming up, Russian grain is set to arrive in Africa within the month. Israel formally declares war against Hamas. And the UN Security Council fails to reach a consensus on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Stay tuned. Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
Bumalik ang Lutong Daza dito sa Net25. Ako si Sandy Daza.
At ako naman si Patpi Daza, and we are the Cooking Cousins. Asahan nyo ang mas nakakatakam na mga recipes, mas malakas na halakhakan,
At tawag ko rito put-put eh.
at syempre mga celebrity guests na game.
Express sa boy din. Galing.
Kita-kits sa kusina. Lutong Daza, Saturdays, 11 a.m. sa Net25.
Magandang araw, magandang araw. Magandang araw, magandang araw. Magandang araw, magandang araw. Magandang araw, magandang araw. Any time of the day, it's super saya. Lalo na kung si Ara lagi mong kasama. Magandang araw, magandang araw.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. According to Russian Agriculture Minister Dmitry Patrushev, Russia will start delivering grain to African countries within the month. President Vladimir Putin told African leaders in July that he would give them tons of Russian grain despite Western sanctions in a bid to shift the general allegiances of the world leading powers. 25 to 50,000 tons of free grain each will be provided within the next 3 to 4 months to countries like Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Mali, Somalia, Central African Republic, and Eritrea, just as the Russian president pledged during the Russia-African summit back in July. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has called the promised grain a welcome donation as Russia and just recently backed out of the Black Sea grain deal that had allowed Ukraine, one of the world's biggest exporters, to ship grain from its Black Sea ports. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Sochi last month, where the two leaders discussed the situation around the revival of the said Black Sea grain deal.
Government lawyers tell Britain top court that it should overturn Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's main policy, which plans to deport migrants to Rwanda. London's Court of Appeals already called the scheme to send migrants to the East African nation unlawful, deeming that Rwanda was not secure enough to be called a third country. The court ruled that those sent to Rwanda would be at risk of being sent home, where they could face persecution despite having a legitimate asylum claim, making the policy unlawful under Britain's Human Rights Act, or HRA, effectively making the European Convention on Human Rights part of the British Constitution. Beginning this week, the Conservative government will argue at the United Kingdom Supreme Court that the ruling was wrong. At the same time, those representing migrants from Syria, Iraq, Iran, Vietnam, and Sudan want the judges to finally rule out the scheme to be unlawful. The political stakes are high, and the outcome would have far-reaching consequences on the future asylum policies of their European neighbors. The court case comes as governments around the world wrestle with how to cope with the arrival of hundreds of thousands of migrants fleeing war zones or seeking better lives in the West. In the United States, President Joe Biden's administration said it would add sections to a border wall to stave off record crossings from Mexico. While in Europe, governments are grappling with how to cope with the arrival of hundreds of thousands of migrants from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The EU's 27 leaders met last week with migration top of the agenda following the arrival of an estimated 250,000 migrants, with Germany introducing border checks to crack down on people smugglers.
Meanwhile, in Colombia, the government and a dissident faction of the FARC guerrilla group announced that they are postponing a scheduled ceasefire and peace talks for over a week. This amid escalating tensions in the country. Jay Suarez has more details.
The formal talks set to begin Sunday in the eastern border town of Cebu will instead start October 16. This, according to representatives for Colombian President Gustavo Petro and the rebel group known as the Central General Staff, or EMC. Presidential Peace Advisor Danilo Rueda says the ceasefire would also now come into effect on October 16. Thousands of indigenous and other rural inhabitants who traveled to Cebu to witness the opening of negotiations cheered on Rueda's remarks. Tensions have mounted in recent weeks as preparations for the talks were carried out. Clashes between guerrilla forces and Colombian troops resulted in at least 22 people killed. Petro has sought to give the dissidents a second chance to lay down arms. He is Colombia's first ever leftist president and a former guerrilla himself. This after they rejected a historic peace agreement in 2016. Jay Suarez from Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In Mali, people grapple with dire shortages of essential resources like food, fuel, and medicine, all due to the blockade imposed by Al-Qaeda-linked militants. Timbuktu, once accustomed to a steady influx of supplies from Mauritania and Algeria, now sees a mere trickle of dozens of trucks delivering necessities. This blockade comes from the escalating conflict pitting Mali's army, supported by Russian Wagner mercenaries, against ethnic Tuareg separatists who are reinforced by religious extremists. As violence intensifies, prices soar, exacerbating the crisis.
Israel has plunged into a state of war against Palestinian fighters, resulting in casualties of over 700 Israelis and 413 Palestinians, with thousands more wounded in the conflict. This eruption of violence was triggered by a sudden and unexpected assault orchestrated by Al-Qassam brigades, the militant arm of Hamas. Israeli Army spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus has compared the surprise attack to a fusion of 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, estimating the participation of roughly 1,000 Palestinian militants in this brazen assault. Hamas, the governing body of the Gaza Strip, justifies this offensive, pointing to the continuous brutality and occupation endured by Palestinians at the hands of Israel. Further complicating the situation, Hezbollah, the Lebanese armed group, has joined the fray by launching mortar attacks into Sheba farms, standing in solidarity with Hamas.
In related news, Hamas has attributed the surprise attack to alleged atrocities against the Palestinian people, boldly labeling it as the greatest battle to end the last occupation on earth. Hamas unleashed a barrage of 5,000 rockets early Saturday morning, targeting numerous military installations and deploying fighters into southern Israel. The Israeli army has confirmed that the Palestinians initiated attacks from land, sea, and air, a campaign that Hamas has dubbed Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Ongoing gun battles are raging in several towns in southern Israel, accompanied by relentless airstrikes carried out by dozens of Israeli fighter jets targeting militant strongholds in the Gaza Strip. Hamas vehemently denies targeting civilians, despite their own videos depicting fighters taking elderly Israelis hostage.
After the brazen attack of Hamas in Israel, the Iron Dome is back in the spotlight, with videos showing its technique of striking rockets lighting up the sky. The Iron Dome is a land-to-air missile defense system developed by Israel to intercept and destroy short-range rockets and cannon shells to protect Israeli areas from missile attacks from nearby countries. It was developed by Rafael Advanced Defense System and Israel Aerospace Industries and was first deployed and declared operational in March of 2011. But how exactly does the Iron Dome system shield Israeli citizens? Sources say the Iron Dome is equipped with competent missile defense batteries that extend to 70 kilometers. It has a radar system that can detect and track incoming projectiles. It continuously updates its position to counter attack. After determining that there is an incoming threat to a populated area, the Iron Dome launches an interceptor missile to neutralize the threat. The launcher has 20 such interceptor missiles. The Iron Dome can also calculate where the intercepted projectile's debris will likely fall, making certain that any of its fragments will not harm people or property on the ground. War experts and engineers consider Iron Dome as one of the most advanced and effective missile defense systems in the world. Earlier this year, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he is reluctant to support any plans to send the Iron Dome system to Ukraine for defense against potential Russia. Netanyahu expressed concerns that such a move could lead to the system falling into the hands of Iran. Tehran has historically maintained strong ties with Palestinian Hamas and Hezbollah. Said groups reportedly hold similar goals, including the destruction of the Israeli state.
Several major airlines have opted to cancel numerous flights to Tel Aviv amid the ongoing state of war between Israel and Palestine's Hamas. American Airlines, Air France, Lufthansa, Emirates, and Ryanair are among the carriers that have pulled out of the flights to the Ben Gurion Airport. However, air travel to Israel's second international airport in Eilat, a popular tourist destination situated on the Red Sea, remains unaffected as airport authorities have not halted commercial airlinks. As of now, flights departing from Tel Aviv have not experienced disruptions. Many airlines are also permitting passengers to modify their flights to and from Tel Aviv without incurring any additional charges.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Israel asked for additional assistance on its war against Hamas. This is under the United States foreign aid to Israel, which provides Jerusalem with more than $3 billion in military assistance yearly. U.S. President Joe Biden told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that military assistance is on its way. This reaffirmed the U.S.'s firm support for Israel. Meanwhile, Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin has directed to bolster the U.S. Army's pursuit in the region to strengthen its deterrence efforts.
As the U.S. vows military assistance to Israel, protesters gather outside of the White House. Arlene Ocampo has the details.
The diaspora and for all those who support the liberation and justice for Palestine.
More than 200 demonstrators gather in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. Waving Palestinian flags and posters, they demand an end to U.S. military aid to Israel. This as U.S. President Joe Biden condemns the attacks on Israel and vows defense support. Similar scenes play out in other parts of America. In New York, about 1,000 people gather in Manhattan, some to show solidarity with Palestinians, others to condemn the Hamas attacks that killed hundreds and injured thousands in Israel. The protests in the U.S. cities, although heated at times, remained peaceful. Arlene Ocampo from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The UN Security Council holds an emergency meeting to address the violence in the Middle East, moments before Israel's ambassador says not enough words can describe what he calls savagery. This after the deadly attacks by Hamas militants on Israel. Rosel Ferry has the details.
Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, says what the world is witnessing are war crimes. This, he says, ahead of a United Nations Security Council emergency meeting on the violence in the Middle East.
What we are witnessing are war crimes, blatant, barbaric war crimes, slaughtering civilians, abusing hostages, taking babies from their mothers. There are no words to describe such savagery.
Erdan says this is Israel's 911. He says his country will do everything to bring their sons and daughters back home. He pleads that as the Security Council prepares to meet, Israel has one sole demand, that these war crimes must be unequivocally condemned. Rosel Ferry for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The United Nations Security Council held an emergency closed-door meeting in the wake of the war between Israel, but failed to reach the unanimous decision required before issuing a joint statement.
About a year ago, We stated before the Security Council, the Palestinian people will be free one day or another, one way or another. We chose the peaceful way, the one the international community advocates for. Do not let Israel prove us wrong for our sake and theirs. This is not a time to let Israel double down on its terrible choices. This is a time to tell Israel it needs to change course, that there is a path to peace where neither Palestinians nor Israelis are killed.
The council met for about 90 minutes and heard a briefing from the UN Middle East Peace Envoy Tor Wennesland. At least 1,000 individuals have been killed since the clash with Hamas and Israeli forces started over the weekend. The United States called on the Council's 15 members to condemn Hamas, but their co-diplomats said that they were expecting a broader, more diplomatic focus than just outright condemnation of Hamas. The United Arab Emirates, which normalized relations with Israel as part of a landmark 2020 deal, said it expected more UNSC meetings on the crisis. Neither Israel nor the Palestinian Authority attended the meeting because they are currently on the Security Council. But both sides have issued statements to forward their claims to the Council. The Palestinian ambassador, who represents the West Bank-centered Palestinian Authority and not rival Hamas, called on the Security Council to focus on ending Israeli occupation.
Regrettably, history for some media and politicians start when Israelis are killed. Our people have endured one deadly year after another. We came to the Security Council month after month, warning of the consequences of Israeli impunity and international inaction.
A statement needs to be agreed upon by consensus before being issued.
Israel has announced a total blockade on Gaza. This includes a ban on food and fuel. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said authorities would cut electricity as part of a complete siege on Hamas-occupied Gaza. Gallant described the move as part of a war against beastly people.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
Brazil will send around 6 aircrafts to repatriate its nationals stranded in the region affected by the Israel-Hamas war. Pearl Rogachon reports.
Brazil Air Force Commander Marcelo Damasceno announces that arrangements are being made to bring back all our Brazilians in the affected region. This after the Palestinian militant group Hamas launched a massive surprise assault from Gaza. Damasceno, however, did not clarify where the flights will land. He says it is not confirmed yet if the first flight will leave tomorrow or Tuesday. This depends on the list of passengers who want to return to Brazil on the repatriation mission. Several of them, he says, are already getting on commercial flights, looking to leave for nearby countries. Damasceno adds that the aircrafts have a capacity of 220 and 230 passengers. Brazil is also sending teams of doctors and psychologists to cooperate in the transfer. Pearl Rogachon for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Up next, Hamas paratroopers attacked a music fest in Israel, resulting in hundreds of casualties. An earthquake in Afghanistan claims over 1,000 lives. And migrant deaths in the EU are increasing at an alarming rate. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break. Rollback bill.
Aksyon sa lahat ng problema. Walang uurungang reklamo. Re-responde anumang sitwasyon. Kung kayo po ay may sumbong, mag-text lamang po sa 0915-415-1035. Mag-email din sa responde@net25.com. Pwede rin kayo magpadala ng inyong pong mensahe sa ating pong Facebook page at Net25TV. Walang imposible at lahat may solusyon sa mga totoong certified e-responder.
Hindi sapat ang talino para manalo. Kailangan nilang bilis ng kamay para hindi matalo.
Please welcome our Gamers na models!
Halika, kayo na may papasa yung tanong na yan.
Sa'yo! Sa'yo na lang.
Ano ang tawag sa isang strand ng spaghetti?
Spaghetti rin.
Ano ang tawag sa isang strand ng spaghetti? Spaghetti rin. And this is the game! Level up!
Hundreds of Israelis attending a music fest were killed after an attack by Palestinian paratroopers. Rescuers said at least 260 bodies were recovered from the site. A video circulating online shows many terrified victims fleeing across the desert on foot to their cars in an attempt to escape from the attack. Survivors said armed gunmen piled into jeeps, going tree by tree in an attempt to shoot people.
In Egypt, a policeman shot 2 Israeli tourists and a local guide dead. The Israeli Foreign Ministry confirmed the deaths in a statement. Authorities have arrested the assailant while a 4th person was wounded and received medical attention. Israel's National Security Council advised its citizens to reconsider traveling abroad, particularly within the Middle Eastern region. It added that visitors already in Egypt should leave as soon as possible, as there is a fear of a rise in motivations of terror groups and lone assailants who could carry out attacks on Israelis abroad. Meanwhile, Cairo has not commented on the attack against the tourists. The deaths come as war sparked after Palestinian militants launched a large-scale attack on Israel.
Over 2,000 are dead and nearly 10,000 injured after a series of earthquakes in western Afghanistan. Rescue workers dig through razed villages for vanishing signs of life. JC Umol tells us more.
Officials says more than 1,300 homes were toppled on Saturday when a magnitude 6.3 quake shook hard to reach areas 30 kilometers or 19 miles northwest of the provincial capital of Herat. The quake was followed by 8 strong aftershocks. In rural Sindajan district, dozens of households were destroyed. Makeshift rescue teams dug trenches in the hope of survivors. The country's disaster management ministry says that across 13 villages, the number that surpasses 2,000. The number of people injured is now close to 10,000. There are on-site search operations in the affected areas. The ministry, however, warns that the fatality figures would likely rise. JC Umul for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Violence marred Liberian President George Weah's re-election campaign in capital Monrovia, with scuffles between his supporters and members of the opposition. Weah, who is up against 19 presidential candidates, gathered thousands of people in the capital on Sunday for the final act of his campaign. However, supporters of his Coalition for Democratic Change and members from the opposition ALCOP threw stones at each other, where police respond with a tear gas. No official toll was available, but reports counted at least 5 men with injuries. The main political parties have pledged peaceful polls, but the deaths of 3 people in clashes last month between rival political camps have fueled fears of electoral violence in the country, which suffered back-to-back civil wars between 1989 and 2003 that left more than 250,000 people dead. Peace and development have been listed among voters' top priorities before they head to the first round of voting on Tuesday.
Security forces in Madagascar fired tear gas to disperse a rally called by opposition parties ahead of elections next month, injuring former President Marc Ravalomanana. Several candidates hoping to defeat the incumbent President Andre Rajoelina had called a peaceful march in Antananarivo against what they call an institutional coup to keep him in power. Ravalomanana, who is among 11 candidates cleared to challenge Rajoelina in elections set for November 9, was injured as police fired tear gas to disperse the crowd of several hundred. Marchers were demanding changes to the officials running the election commission and for the formation of a special court to hear election disputes. They also want Rajoelina to be disqualified from running on the grounds that he is not a Madagascan citizen, an accusation he has dismissed in the past.
Diabea ang pilaminana na natao. Nefa niya, afal niya, tsulambuto no azo teo. Voatoro ka grenade lacrymogène na daholo izay candidat rehetra rehetra reo ary ny safidina manokana mihitsiny.
Ny antsiresanao
tsy mahagaga le izy satria fitondrana tsolambuto io entin'ny tsay Christian io.
Tena ratsy indrindra. Le olana amitsika miteny zao efa ao le alabato efa anatiny famitana ny lisam-pifidianana. Donc zany tsy azo ekena mihitsy io zay mahatonga anay miteny ary
An Iranian teenager who was not wearing a headscarf collapsed in a metro train, igniting accusations of the involvement of Iran's morality police in the incident. A 16-year-old girl from Iran named Armita Geravand is now comatose after she was seen entering Tehran's metro train station without a headscarf. Information about what happened a few seconds later remains a mystery, as the following footage showed her limp body being dragged out by the other passengers. The Iranian state TV report offered no explanation regarding the incident and refused to release any footage of what has happened inside the train. Activists are now demanding an independent investigation by the UN's fact-finding mission, citing the pressure put by Iranian government towards victims' families and the state TV's history of airing coerced confessions. The issue was also heightened because of its similarities with the 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who died last year in the custody of morality police, which has caused months of national protests.
In Canada, the country's most populous city is witnessing a historic protest by renters. Demonstrators are fighting against rent increases and deplorable living conditions. Chantel Santos has that story.
Over the weekend, Toronto has seen its largest collective rent strike by tenants in the city's history. Frustrated tenants at 2 Toronto apartment buildings have gone on strike this week, protesting against rent increases and awful living conditions at their residences. 2 apartment buildings, 1440 and 1442 Lawrence Avenue West, run by Barney River Investments, allegedly refuses to address serious repairs, which includes insect infestations. To add, elevators are regularly out of service and garbage disposal is not properly maintained. Conditions are said to be so bad that Canada Post has refused to deliver mails and parcels to the said apartment buildings. According to Chiara Padovani, co-chair of the York Southwestern Tenant Union, the landlord is adding salt to injury by increasing the rent prices while not doing anything to fix the issues. Residents of the Lawrence Avenue West apartments join other tenants from other apartments in Toronto who are also on strike and refusing to pay rent until the landlords address all their issues. Together, there are more than 500 tenants on strike, making it the largest rent strike in Toronto's history. Mayor Olivia Chow attempted to step in and mediate the landlords and tenants early last month. However, the landlords did not show up and instead issued eviction notices. In Toronto, Ontario, Chantel Santos from Matana Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
As the number of migrants braving the tides for a better life with their European neighbors rises, the number of casualties due to accidents at sea has been growing at an alarming rate. Elijah Villanueva has the details.
Director Ruven Menikdiwela of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees
says between January and September 24 of this year, over 2,500 migrants were found dead or are still missing. This is a significant increase from the 1,680 people who died or went missing during the same period in 2022. Minigdiwala estimates that over 102,000 refugees and migrants came from Tunisia. Between January and August of this year, over 45,000 Libyans tried to cross the central Mediterranean to Europe. Minigdiwala says over 130,000 asylum seekers arrived in Italy. The International Organization for Migration, or IOM, reports migrants who decide to embark on a dangerous journey have different reasons. Some of the refugees want to reach Europe to flee from war or torture, to search for jobs, or to help one's family. But the migrants' dreams are often shattered by sea accidents due to unpredictable storms or overcrowded and unseaworthy boats. Some boats also have limited flotation devices. One Coast Guard agency spokesman has described the boats as coffins in water. Authorities have acknowledged these sea tragedies and called for shared solutions. UN agencies and the IOM joined hands for coordinated European search and rescue operations in the central Mediterranean. They also made measures for safer legal pathways for migration and asylum to prevent deaths at sea. The European Commission is also working with officials to stop smugglers and develop safe ways for people to come to the EU. Elijah Villanueva for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In Colombia, a 6-year-old female jaguar, a victim of illegal wildlife trafficking, has been rescued and is now in a biopark in Melgar, Tolima. Aya James reports.
The jaguar was taken from her habitat and mistreated. It has been transferred from the Colombian city of Cucuta, Norte de Santander, to the CAFAM biopark in Melgar, Tolima. The jaguar was transported in a helicopter accompanied by 2 veterinarians. It was then taken to a zoo to be assessed before being admitted into an animal protection program. The jaguar is the largest feline in America and the 3rd largest in the world. It is considered a threatened species which has largely disappeared from 46% of its original territories. It is considered extinct in countries such as El Salvador and Uruguay. Naya Dames for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, Amazon unveils its plan to compete against Starlink. 3 countries are set to co-host the 2030 World Cup. And Holocaust drama Zone of Interest receives critical acclaim. Catch more news in business, tech, sports, and entertainment when we return.
Kwentuhang makaka-relate kay you.
Menopause. Meron ka bang nararamdaman ng mga signs ng menopause?
Menopause really happens. In my case, I had a condition called endometriosis.
Miss Corina, ganda po ng hair nyo. Ano pong shampoo nyo?
Mapa-senior man kay you.
My apos are here. They're here with me and they give me such joy. And so, kung hindi ako magtatrabaho, how could I spoil them?
O Gen Z?
Nar is actually an accent from Australia. So like when you say no, you don't say no. They say nar.
Bida kayo dito. Sumay!
Let's just always choose to be kind.
Kaya ugaliin ang tumutok kung saan masaya at maganda ang simula ng araw. 10 a.m. to 12, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, kada umaga.
U.S. stock futures fell in Asia on Monday as the military conflict in the Middle East pushed oil and treasuries. Analysts say the existing war between Israel and Hamas means the risk is higher oil prices and a slump in equities. They say the situation would also create a surge in volatility but will support the dollar and yen, though the war will undermine risk currencies. Experts warn that there could be a chance that oil supplies from Iran might be disrupted due to the rising conflict. Economists believe the ongoing violence in Israel will likely push investors to buy more safe haven assets like gold and U.S. dollar. A safe haven asset is a financial instrument that is expected to retain its value or even gain value during times of economic downturn. Analysts say the U.S. dollar and U.S. Treasury have been selling off aggressively since Israel announced the war. The gold also rose and increased haven demands within hours after the Hamas attack on Israel. On Monday, the gold gained as much as 1.2%. Experts say bigger gains will only come if a substantial escalation happens across the Middle East region. The World Bank forecasts growth of 1.6% in Russia's gross domestic product, or GDP, in 2023. It also projects a 1.3% growth of Russia's GDP in 2024. The World Bank said it had upgraded the overall outlook for Russia's economy owing to increased government spending on military needs and social payments, as well as stability of consumption levels. HSBC has signed an agreement to buy Citi's $3.6 billion assets and deposits in mainland China. The deal comprises retail wealth management business as of August this year and includes customers across 11 major cities. HSBC Chief Executive Officer Nuno Matos says the acquisition will be integrated into the company's wealth and personal banking business unit. The deal is expected to close in the first of 2024. Spain has successfully launched its first private rocket. Dubbed the Miura-1 rocket, it was launched from a military base in the southern region of Andalusia. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez commended the launch while describing it as a nation's milestone. Meanwhile, PLD Space, the firm that launched the Miura-1, affirmed that they also have been successful. The Spanish startup noted that it had achieved all of its technical objectives. China has announced its plans to expand the Tiangong space station from 3 to 6 modules in the coming years. The China Academy of Space Technology says their expanded space station will also offer astronauts from other nations an alternative platform for near-Earth missions. The Tiangong space station has been fully operational since late 2022. It has hosted a maximum of 3 astronauts at an orbital altitude of up to 450 kilometers. At 180 metric tons after its expansion to 6 modules, Tiangong is still just 40% of the mass of the International Space Station. But NASA's ISS is expected to be decommissioned after year 2030, or about the same time as China has said it expects to become a major space power. Amazon has its sights set on more than just online shopping. Recently, it launched a rocket into space. Elise Danielle has more.
The Atlas V rocket carrying 2 test satellites lift off from Cape Canaveral. This is part of online giant Amazon's effort to deliver internet service from space. Dubbed Project Kuiper, it aims to compete with Elon Musk's Starlink service. According to Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, the project will provide fast, affordable broadband to unserved and underserved communities around the world. The company plans to send more than 3,000 satellites in low Earth orbit. The estimated investment is about $10 billion. Elise Danielle for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Sports analyst Kenito Hanson lauded the players of Gilas Pilipinas for the recently concluded 19th Asian Games.
Yung mindset ni Coach Tim Con, kumuha siya ng mga player na medyo may familiarity na sa isa't isa. They have played together in previous teams, and he felt that ito mga player, walang superstar attitude. Lahat sila mga can accept the fact that they will...
Assembled 12 days before the basketball competition, Gilas went through many hurdles from the eligibility of players to quick tuning under Coach Tim Cone. Though it was indeed a short preparation, Gilas Pilipinas captured the gold medal and the hearts of many Filipinos and international fans. Henson was quick to observe that the Philippines won because of team effort and nobody had a superstar attitude in the team.
Yung mindset ni Coach Tim Con, kumuha siya ng mga player na medyo may familiarity na sa isa't isa. They have played together in previous teams, and he felt that ito mga player, walang superstar attitude. Lahat sila mga can accept the fact that they will all be role players sa team na to.
Three countries, Morocco, Portugal, and Spain, will be joint hosts for the 2030 World Cup. Games, however, will also be played in Uruguay, Argentina, and Paraguay. This as the footballing showpiece celebrates its centenary. Irvin Arquiza has the details.
FIFA announces that the matches in South America, one each in Montevideo, Buenos Aires, and Asunción, are part of the celebration marking the centenary of the first World Cup in Uruguay. The announcement ends competition between two major bids, one by Spain and Portugal, and the other by Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, and Paraguay. FIFA President Gianni Infantino says in a divided world, FIFA and football are uniting.
In 2030, we'll have a unique global footprint, 3 continents, Africa, Europe, South America, 6 countries, Argentina, Morocco, Paraguay, Portugal, Spain, and Uruguay, welcoming and uniting the world while celebrating together the beautiful game, the centenary, and, of course, the FIFA World Cup.
World Football's governing body says the hosts must still be officially rubber-stamped by the FIFA Congress next year. The announcement, however, means the way seems clear for this unprecedented intercontinental format. It promises complex political and logistical challenges and raises further questions about the environmental impact of major sporting events. The move drew immediate criticism from the lobby group, Football Supporters Europe. The group says on X that FIFA continues its cycle of destruction against the greatest tournament on earth and that the decision is horrendous for supporters and disregards the environment. Irvin Arquiza for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
BTS singer Jungkook has revealed details about his much-awaited solo album titled Golden. Jungkook says his album will be released on November 3 of this year. He says it consists of 11 tracks and includes his pre-release hits 7 and 3D. Jungkook explains Golden is inspired by his golden moments as the youngest member of BTS and as a solo artist. A new film from acclaimed English director Jonathan Glazer gives the viewers a glimpse into the terrifying chapter in human history, the Holocaust, but removes the horror from the frame and instead focuses on a Nazi family in their bucolic home. Stephanie Mayo has the scoop.
English director Jonathan Glazer's style has always been moody and provocative. His latest, The Zone of Interest, a historical drama based on the 2014 novel of the same name by Martin Amis, retains his economical and stark approach to a terrifying chapter in human history, the Holocaust. The Zone of Interest follows the Haas family headed by Rudolf Haas, the commandant of the Auschwitz concentration camp. His brood resides in a stately home right next to the camp. The film steers clear of the horror going on inside the camp and instead gives the audience the point of view of the camp's commandant and his family. The film premiered at this year's Cannes, where it won the second best film or the Grand Prix, as well as the FIPRA Prize. It is set to be released in the United States on December 8th by A24 and was selected as the British entry for the Best International Feature Film at the 96th Academy Awards. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
In Papua New Guinea, a social organization that promotes goodwill by highlighting the culture of different countries celebrates the Philippines. Eko Ortaleza Quinola reports.
This October, the All Nations Women's Group Papua New Guinea centers on the rich cultural heritage, values, and traditions of the Philippines. The event showcases the best of the Philippines, from the baro at saya to indigenous crafts, to delectable foods, and to customs and traditions.
The event was a lot of fun. It was lovely to see the clothes, the fashion, the food, and to learn about the wildlife. Didn't know there were so many birds.
We love to find friendship with other Filipino women staying here in PNG, and also to inspire and encourage others to visit the Philippines and also share our roots to other nationalities.
As part of the celebration, the organization extends a donation to one of the schools in the city.
All Nation Women, actually, they have decided to give us, donate more funding for the schools, buying books for the children and for the teachers, and we are extremely grateful.
Similar projects are already lined up.
We are thinking of having a golf competition for ladies. It's a good learning for everyone. It generates more respect, more acceptability. Thank you so much for organizing. We love Philippines, and today's celebration has actually increased the love for Filipinos more.
In this event, Filipinos proudly talk about the Philippines, while others share what they love most about the island country.
Being part of this all nation and being part of the very rich Filipino culture and a part of these amazing women, it's been very good for me because in a country where I don't really have family or friends, they're pretty much everything.
Proud as a Filipino because we're being compassionate and very accommodating people. Kamusta sa inyong lahat? Thank you.
Filipino people are really, really so sweet, so nice, always smiling and friendly.
Wonderful people, they're very friendly and very open to everyone.
Eko Hortaleza Quinola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
It's Monday, and to start the week, here's a quote from British psychoanalyst Anna Freud. Sometimes the most beautiful thing is precisely the one that comes unexpectedly and unearned.
I can name a few things in my life that came unexpectedly that I am so grateful for. I was actually listening to a podcast coming here, and sometimes we're so impatient with things we want to happen with our lives, but if it's really for us, it's going to happen.
I'm just happy to welcome beautiful surprises. That's all I can say about that.
Hopefully some this week, right?
Hopefully some this week.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Thank you for choosing Mata ng Agila International, your trusted news source, connecting you to the world and on point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.